Have you taken your child out of mainstream education only to find they're not engaging in home education? Are they just sitting around all day playing Xbox, watching films, maybe sleeping a lot? Are you worried that taking them out of school was a mistake? What if it's actually going exactly as it should and you did exactly the right thing? What if today was your last day worrying about it? Welcome to Support for Worried Homeschooling Parents, a place dedicated to supporting and reassuring you on your home education journey. If you've clicked on this video, you're probably feeling uncertain, nervous, maybe even anxious about the process of DeSchooling. There are so many worries, questions, and doubts, especially when starting out on the DeSchooling journey. It can make you feel like your child and their future are slipping away. Firstly, it's completely normal to feel anxious, to question your decisions, and to wonder if you're doing the right thing. Watching your child or children doing very little after years of nursery and school, possibly high school, can be very unnerving. They may seem like they will never be engaged with home education. But what if this not engaging phase is actually a crucial part of the process? DeSchooling is about letting go of old habits, beliefs, and social pressures, like real learning only happens at a desk, or that progress must be measured by tests and grades. For parents, DeSchooling is an invitation to see learning through fresh eyes, to rediscover curiosity, and to trust in the natural process of growth. DeSchooling is not as much about learning as it is unlearning. It's a time to unlearn the pressures and expectations of the school system and to embrace a more open, flexible, and natural approach to education, one that values exploration, connection, and the unique journey of every child and family. Think of it as pressing the reset button, not just for your child, but for yourself as well. Learning is far more than memorizing facts or passing exams. At its heart, learning is the process of making sense of the world. It's how humans of all ages adapt, grow, and thrive. Learning happens when new experiences, ideas, or information connect with what is already known, creating new understanding and skills. Learning isn't confined to classrooms or textbooks. Children learn to walk, talk, and interact with others long before they ever encounter formal education. This natural learning is powered by curiosity, play, and the irresistible urge to explore. Learning can be visible, like mastering a new skill, or invisible, such as developing empathy, resilience, or critical thinking. It happens through observation, experimentation, mistakes, and reflection. Sometimes it's fast and exciting, other times it's slow and subtle, but it's always personal and unique to the individual. There are many forms of learning. Experiential learning, gaining knowledge through direct experience and doing. Social learning, picking up ideas and behaviors from others. Self-directed learning, following personal interests and questions. Formal learning, structured lessons, often found in schools. True learning is meaningful and lasting when it's connected to real life and personal interests. It's about nurturing curiosity, encouraging questions, and supporting the natural drive to understand and engage with the world. In essence, learning is the ongoing process of becoming more capable, thoughtful, and connected both to oneself and to others. Learning comes in many flavors, but two of the most important are natural learning and cognitive learning. Understanding the difference can help parents recognize the full spectrum of how children grow and develop. Natural learning is the kind of learning that happens almost by accident, organically, without anyone cracking open a textbook or setting a timer. It's driven by curiosity, play, and real-life experiences. Think of a toddler learning to speak. No one sits them down with flashcards and grammar drills. Instead, they absorb language by listening, mimicking, and experimenting. Children are natural-born scientists. Give a child a puddle, and suddenly you have a lesson in physics, biology, and laundry all at once. This kind of learning is spontaneous and often looks like repetitive play, but it's actually deep research in disguise. As educational philosopher Jean Piaget said, "Play is the work of childhood. Through play, children test ideas, solve problems, and make sense of their world." Scientific research backs this up. Psychologist Peter Gray, in his studies on self-directed education, found that children learn best when they are free to follow their interests. His research at the Sudbury Valley School showed that students who directed their own learning developed strong problem-solving skills, creativity, and confidence without formal instruction. Cognitive learning, on the other hand, is what most people picture when they think of studying. It involves conscious effort like memorizing multiplication tables, practicing the piano, or preparing for a spelling test. This type of learning is structured and intentional. It's the mental equivalent of going to the gym. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's a slog, but it builds important skills and discipline. Philosopher John Dewey emphasized the value of both types of learning, but warned against relying solely on rote memorization. He believed education should be an active and constructive process, not just the passive absorption of facts. Both natural and cognitive learning are essential. Natural learning lays the foundation, curiosity, creativity, and a love of discovery. Cognitive learning builds on that foundation, helping children develop focus, persistence, and mastery of complex skills. When both are valued, children not only gain knowledge, but also develop the confidence and curiosity to keep learning for life. Unfortunately, traditional education often overlooks natural learning in favor of cognitive drills. It's a bit like trying to grow a garden by watering only the flowers and ignoring the roots. As Albert Einstein famously quipped, "Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school." In other words, it's the stuff that sticks with you long after you've forgotten the capital of Mongolia. Natural learning. A child learns about gravity by jumping off the sofa and possibly learns about parental reactions at the same time. Or, a child masters gravity, balance, and complex physics by skateboarding. No textbook required. Cognitive learning. That same child later studies Newton's laws in a science book, connecting the dots between their real-life experiences and scientific principles. Natural learning. A child becomes fascinated by bugs, spends hours observing them, and asks endless questions, sometimes more than Google can handle. Cognitive learning. That curiosity grows, and maybe one day that child becomes the next Jane Goodall or David Attenborough, turning a passion for bugs into a lifelong pursuit of knowledge. Natural learning and cognitive learning are partners in the dance of education. When both are valued, children not only gain knowledge, but also develop the confidence and curiosity to keep learning for life. However, the way society approaches education hasn't always reflected this balance. Schools, as we know them today, are a relatively recent invention in human history. They emerged during the Industrial Age, a time when the world needed factory workers who could follow instructions, keep to schedules, and perform repetitive tasks efficiently. The structure of school bells signaling the start and end of lessons, uniforms to promote conformity, and standardized tests to measure progress was designed to meet the needs of an industrial society, not necessarily the needs of individual learners. This system was never truly intended to nurture every child's unique way of learning or to foster a lifelong love of discovery. Instead, it prioritized order, predictability, and uniformity. The focus was on producing workers who could fit into a specific mold rather than on cultivating diverse talents, creativity, or the natural curiosity that drives real learning. If you've ever wondered why school feels a bit like a conveyor belt, now you know it was literally designed that way. As a result, schools often emphasized cognitive learning, memorizing facts, following instructions, and passing exams while overlooking the importance of natural learning through exploration, play, and personal interest. This approach shaped our cultural expectations of what real learning looks like, sometimes making it hard to recognize or value the learning that happens outside of formal lessons. Society has spent generations convincing us that learning only counts if it comes with a test at the end. Understanding this history helps explain why so many parents worry when their children's learning doesn't look like school. But by embracing both natural and cognitive learning, families can move beyond the limitations of the old model and support children in becoming lifelong learners, curious, capable, and ready for whatever the future holds. Friedrich Nietzsche believed education should nurture individuality and creativity, not just conformity. He famously said, "He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying." Nietzsche warned against education systems that stifle the spirit, urging us to remember that true learning is about becoming fully ourselves, not just ticking boxes or blending in with the crowd. John Dewey, on the other hand, championed experiential learning, learning by doing. He argued, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. Dewey believed education should be child-centered and responsive to individual needs, not a one-size-fits-all conveyor belt. His philosophy reminds us that education should evolve with the learner, not force the learner to fit the system. Now, you might be thinking back to the COVID years and the somewhat forced period of homeschooling, especially if you live in the UK like I do. During COVID, many families experienced what could only be described as school at home. Zoom classes, or as my children affectionately called them, zombie classes. They never really became students of this method, but their curiosity got the better of them, so we had a peak. Set curricula, schedules, tests, headaches, and the occasional showdown with a child who is, quite frankly, just trying to be a child. What we saw was very different from true home education. So let's put that particular nightmare right out of our heads. Home education embraces a much broader, more flexible, natural, and let's be honest, more human approach. It allows learning to happen organically in response to the child's interests and at their own pace. The Maoris have a word for autism, taki watanga, meaning in his or her own time and space. This doesn't mean that math, science, English, and those subjects children might not find so thrilling are ignored. Instead, they're woven into daily life and explored in ways that make sense for each child. Sometimes math is learned through baking, science through gardening, and English through storytelling, or even a heated debate. The key difference is that home education values the journey of learning, not just the destination. It's about nurturing curiosity, creativity, and a lifelong love of discovery, without the pressure of tests and rigid timetables. Learning styles in action, a real-life example. Let's take a child who doesn't like math. Let's call him William. Will hates math with a capital H. Or maybe math just bores him. Either way, he's not feeling it, and there's going to be some heavy resistance when the math textbooks come out. First of all, that's okay. It's absolutely fine for a child not to be interested in maths. Many adults can relate. Instead of forcing the issue, focus on his interests and wait for opportunities to show where math naturally appears in his world. This might sound easier said than done, but the real challenge is shifting how we think about learning, almost like remembering what real learning looks like. Sometimes it means thinking about math and your child in a completely new way. My sons are 16 and 14, both home educated and both learning to play the guitar. Since our DeSchooling journey began, I've paid much closer attention to how they each learn naturally, and it's fascinating to see how different their approaches are. When I teach both boys the same song at the same time, I end up explaining it in two completely different ways. First, I use a fairly traditional approach. I'll say things like, third finger, second fret, D string, then middle finger, third fret, A string, and so on. After a few of these instructions, my youngest son, Thomas, is playing the notes like he's ticking off checkpoints on a list. He smooths out the sequence until it starts to sound like the song. Meanwhile, William is still looking at me, a little confused, and his body language starts to shift. He's not connecting with the instructions. Then, I show him the shape his fingers will make on the fretboard, how the strings and frets form little rectangles, or the pattern his fingers will trace as he plays. Then I watch closely because it's subtle, as he almost draws the shape onto the guitar in his mind with his fingertip. When he starts to play, each note comes out with feeling and a kind of respect for why it's there. Thomas approaches each note like a mini achievement, building confidence with every success and usually learning the song quickly. But he sometimes struggles with the pacing and feeling of the music. William doesn't just learn the song, he feels it. He soaks the music or whatever I am teaching him through himself, just keeping the parts he needs for the great puzzle inside him. He draws shapes in his mind and places his fingertips on the strings as if he's gently bringing each note to life. Thomas uses repetition and numbers, first, second, A, D, arranging them in order to create the song. He asks practical questions like, can I use a different finger for that note? And thinks of the notes as numbers and steps. William turned the same information into a visual reference in his mind, a pattern. This example shows that learning isn't one size fits all. Some children thrive on structure and sequence, while others need to see, feel, or experience things in their own way. The key is to recognize and respect these differences, and to remember that real learning often happens when we least expect it, sometimes in the middle of a guitar lesson, sometimes while avoiding a math textbook, and sometimes in the quiet moments when a child is simply allowed to be themselves. People with dyslexia often don't think in words, they think in a series of visual references in their minds, making the theory of spelling feel like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. The ability to reform information into something compatible with an individual mind shouldn't be seen as a weakness. In fact, it's absolutely remarkable. This kind of flexible thinking is often how the biggest and most complex problems are approached and solved by some of the brightest minds and organizations in the world. Thomas's ability to learn from verbal instructions and follow a step-by-step methodical approach is just as impressive. What's even more fascinating is what happens when the boys teach each other what they're still learning about a song. I'll encourage William to talk about the song's meaning, to be creative, and to think about how and why it was written. William often describes the feeling of the music, bringing a sense of emotion and story to the notes. Thomas, meanwhile, will help William remember tricky parts if he starts to forget. He's great at keeping things light, making jokes, and turning practice into a fun, shared experience. Sometimes, I have to gently guide Thomas to slow down. He tends to throw a lot of information at William all at once, which just highlights again how differently they process and share knowledge. After that, I leave them to it for a few days. I wouldn't dream of testing or grading them on their playing. Instead, I might ask if they'd like to play the song together, or play it for me simply because I love the song and love that they can play it. Rethinking math and learning confidence. William hates math like a lot of children. So, the math textbooks, the apps, and all the direct teaching methods have been put away. I wait for opportunities to talk about math as it naturally comes up through interests, daily life, or even a spontaneous question. This approach requires a more open and indirect way of thinking about math, recognizing it, having a little foresight, and turning away from pressure and timetables. The focus shifts to their interests, letting the skill of learning develop and the confidence that comes with it. If someone knows they can learn, does the subject really matter? The most important thing is building the belief that learning is possible, no matter the topic. And just to clear up a common myth, there's no universal rule that says children can't use calculators. Whoever decided to stamp that little no calculator icon on math worksheets should probably be investigated. Using calculators is absolutely fine. Adults use computers and AI to make life easier, faster, and more productive, so why not let children use calculators? Kids will still be able to do basic mental arithmetic after using calculators, just like people can still write after decades of texting on their phones. If William isn't interested in math, chances are he won't need advanced math in his daily life. But if he ever decides he does, the most important thing is that he feels confident in his ability to learn anything he chooses. He needs to be open to learning, resilient enough to keep going through challenges, and independent in his approach. Removing time limits means William won't have anyone telling him when to stop learning. A young person prepared for life in this way will know no limits to what they can learn. If William decides to tackle math directly one day, he'll do so with the same freedom and confidence he enjoyed while learning Come As You Are by Nirvana at his own pace, in his own way, and with the belief that he can master anything he sets his mind to. Child-led learning means following a child's interests and allowing them to take the lead in their education. If this sounds a little wild, don't worry, you're not alone. Most adults grew up with formal education, so the idea of letting a child steer their own learning can feel as strange as letting a cat drive a car. But child-led learning isn't a new or untested idea. In fact, it's been discussed and studied for decades, and the research is clear. Children learn best when they're motivated and engaged. Studies show that self-directed learning fosters creativity, problem-solving, and resilience. When children are allowed to explore what excites them, they develop a genuine love of learning and the confidence to tackle new challenges. As Maria Montessori put it, the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, "The children are now working as if I did not exist." Peter Gray, a leading researcher in self-directed education, agrees. Children come into the world burning to learn and genetically programmed with extraordinary capacities for learning. Before child-led learning can truly begin, there's an important step: deschooling. This period of rest and decompression is sometimes called unschooling or even deprogramming. But it all means the same thing: letting go of old habits, beliefs, and social pressures shaped by years of traditional schooling. It's about unlearning the idea that learning only happens at a desk, or that progress must be measured by tests and grades. For parents, deschooling is an invitation to see learning through fresh eyes, to rediscover curiosity, and to trust in the natural process of growth. The first step isn't learning, it's unlearning. This can be a little terrifying. Letting go of the pressures and expectations of the school system and society can feel like floating away on a raft, unsure of what's on the other side. Doubts and worries are normal, and they show just how much you care about your child's future. So what does deschooling look like? In short, let your child be free and relax. No academic pressure. Of course, children still need to make their beds, clean up after themselves, and handle their usual responsibilities, just without the added weight of formal education. If your child had a negative experience at school, this period is even more important and may need to last longer, roughly a month for every year spent in school, though every child is different. This period can feel uncertain, perhaps more so than any other. Watching your child do very little each day might feel like you're drifting further from shore, but remember, this is intentional. You're not failing. You're giving your child the space to heal, decompress, and rediscover their natural curiosity. Observing children through the deschooling period is both a skill and an adventure, like bird watching. But your birds are mostly found on the sofa, clutching game controllers and inhaling toast instead of worms. Deschooling Step-by-Step Guide. 1. Let go of the school schedule. Expect a period that begins with a lot of doing nothing. Just as an athlete needs rest before a big game, kids need downtime to reset from institutional structure. 2. Create gentle daily rhythms. Instead of strict timetables, weave together meals, outdoor walks, and free choice activities. Invite connection by cooking together, sharing a joke, or exploring local nature. 3. Become a curious observer. Watch without interfering. Take notes on what draws your child's attention, what bores them, and when their eyes light up. Levels of patience are required. What to observe. During DeSchooling, keep your detective hat on, but remember you're observing, not judging. Patterns of play and relaxation. Notice what activities your child gravitates toward without prompting. Are they building with Lego, drawing, binging documentaries, or perfecting Minecraft fortresses? Notice what your child chooses when there's no task or schedule. Do they head for art supplies, run outside, bury themselves in a book, or start designing the world's longest marble run? Each activity is a clue to deeper interests and learning styles. Curiosity and questions. Watch for spontaneous questions or moments of fascination. These sparks mark the return of natural learning drives. How does Wi-Fi work? Leads to internet research, experiments, maybe even a DIY antenna project. Maybe keep a shared notebook for their questions, add to it together, and review occasionally, showing you value their innate inquisitiveness. Social tendencies. Observe how your child interacts with family, friends, pets, or imaginary scenarios. Do they seek company or prefer time alone? These preferences hint at their ideal learning environment. Emotional shifts. Look for changes in mood, confidence, and engagement. As children decompress from school routines, peaks and troughs are normal. Track changes in mood, confidence, and stress. It's normal for children to shift from high excitement to frustration or boredom. Growth often starts here. After a few bored days, a child suddenly starts a garden or gets lost in drawing. Maybe celebrate the breakthroughs. Sometimes the best projects come after a stretch of doing nothing. Watch for who and what your child seeks out. Do they chat with neighbors, grandparents, siblings? Do they prefer solo time? A child who spends extra time with pets may learn about empathy, biology, or responsibility. Maybe encourage meetups with other homeschoolers. Notice what's energizing or draining for them. 6. Self-directed activities. Watch as your child initiates their own activities, maybe a science experiment, a family newsletter, or a YouTube channel. Document spontaneous learning as it happens, like a baking disaster turning into a lesson in chemistry and perseverance. Create space for projects to unfold without schedule or outcome pressure. Use a journal or phone notes to jot daily observations. Describe what you see, hear, and notice, not what you expect. Occasionally ask, what was the best part of your day? And listen for themes over time. If possible, share observations with your child, showing them you value their authentic learning, even when it looks like play or rest. Remember, DeSchooling is a season for noticing, not assessing. Observe with gentle curiosity. Let learning unfold organically, and trust that the real growth might be happening just when things seem most quiet or aimless. Keep communication open. Ask what they'd love to try. Make a bucket list of experiences, from wild science experiments to movie nights. Tend the environment, not the child. Adjust surroundings to support possibilities: books, art supplies, random seeds for planting. Step back and see what happens. Celebrate non-academic wins. Praise exploration. If your child teaches the dog tricks or invents a new sandwich, those are victories. Learning is everywhere. DeSchooling takes time, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. The true challenge is not your child's apparent inactivity, but resisting the urge to become the school police. Doubts will surface, especially when relatives ask, so what are they learning? Practice explaining that DeSchooling is about rediscovering curiosity, not checking off worksheets. Train yourself to let go of traditional education, anxieties, and social pressures. Every child's path is unique, By observing without judgment, you're laying the foundation for lifelong learning, resilience, and self-motivation. So breathe out, you're doing it right. Stick with the process, keep a sense of humor, and trust in your child's innate drive to learn. Deschooling doesn't last forever. Gradually, you'll notice a change. Your child's curiosity will spark back to life. They'll start to explore, ask questions, and engage with the world around them. When you feel that energy returning, even if it's just a flicker, you'll know it's time to begin the next chapter. Deschooling is not a sign of failure. It's a vital, intentional part of the transition from school to home education. Children need time to decompress, rediscover their interests, and learn how to learn outside of a classroom. Parents need this time too, to observe, reflect, and let go of old expectations. It's normal for children to seem disengaged at first. Learning is happening, even when it doesn't look like school. Trust the process, trust your child, and trust yourself. Taking your child out of school was not a mistake. Deschooling is the bridge to a richer, more meaningful education, one that honors your child's individuality and natural curiosity. No more worrying about deschooling. You're exactly where you need to be. Rethinking education is no small task, especially when it means stepping away from the familiar routines and expectations of traditional schooling. It's natural to feel uncertain, to question your choices, and to worry when learning doesn't look like what you remember from your own childhood. But as explored throughout these sections, true learning is so much more than memorizing facts or passing exams. It's about making sense of the world, nurturing curiosity, and building the confidence to keep growing no matter the subject or setting. Both natural and cognitive learning have their place, each supporting the other in the dance of education. When children are allowed to follow their interests and learn in ways that suit their unique minds, they develop not just knowledge, but also resilience, creativity, and a lifelong love of discovery. The stories of William and Thomas show that every child learns differently, and that these differences are strengths to be celebrated, not obstacles to be overcome. The history of schooling reminds us that the system was never designed with every child's individuality in mind. It was built for a different era with different goals. By embracing child-led learning and allowing time for deschooling, families can move beyond outdated models and create an environment where real, meaningful learning can flourish. Deschooling is not a step backward, it's a vital, intentional pause that allows both children and parents to unlearn old habits and rediscover the joy of learning. It's a time to trust the process, observe quietly, and let curiosity lead the way. Even when it looks like nothing is happening, growth is taking place beneath the surface. Taking your child out of school is not a mistake. It's an act of courage and care, a commitment to honoring your child's individuality and potential. By trusting in the natural process of learning, supporting both natural and cognitive growth, and letting go of unnecessary pressures, you are giving your child the greatest gift, the freedom and confidence to learn for life. You are exactly where you need to be. Trust yourself, trust your child, and embrace the journey ahead. The adventure of learning has only just begun. Click here to watch another video about some of the main worries surrounding home educating.